A very speculative content today, guys, but still I would like to share with you my thoughts. So when you look at this chart, what do you see when you compare the previous cycle and the current cycle? Me personally, I would say that this accumulation zone was much longer than the current one, which should be actually opposite because the capitalization of Bitcoin at this area is much higher than here, so it should be harder to push the price higher. But it does happen. In fact, you may consider that there's another zone over here before the price became parabolic, and basically the inflection point is at the price value which was equal to the previous all-time high. So you see the slope change over here to the much steeper one. Now you may consider that the same thing will happen and this zone of the first growth period will happen around here and will be almost the same duration as the accumulation zone. So it will put us to the end of 2019, something like actually October, November, maybe potentially December, but very, very close when we'll reach the value of the previous all-time high. So I'm just wondering why this is happening, despite all the rationale behind the fact that it should go longer. So, and here is a bit controversial part. So if you would assume that this market is not organic, but it's actually moved by some huge players who are manipulating it and driving in the way that they like, then you may think that they don't want to wait for that long. They wanted to make it much faster to reach the new highs. So why is that? Well, first reason is that they already have a lot here and they don't want to let many people realize how value Bitcoin is and enter this area on the way to the upside. So, and actually you can look at many examples of how the general narrative changes even in media. For example, Anthony Pompliano was again on CNBC and it was a huge debate about Bitcoin with the person who is apparently not that positive about BTC. And on the social media platforms like Twitter and YouTube, people are saying that it seems like this guy doesn't really understand the problem which he is discussing. And Anthony Pompliano explained him what are his mistakes and misunderstanding, but it seems like that he doesn't understand that either. There was also, for example, Jacob Canfield, who made this chart about CNBC predictions on the price of Bitcoin during the previous bear market period. You see, every time when CNBC was bullish, the price went down basically next day, and vice versa. When the report from CNBC was bearish, the price shoot to the upside basically the same day. So Jacob Canfield also appeared on CNBC recently, and it seems like there's more and more people with positive thinking about crypto, about Bitcoin, and they're sort of transmitting positiveness about cryptocurrencies to the huge audience and those like middle-class investors who are actually watching CNBC. At the same time, the same Anthony Pompliano was commenting the recent video from Anderson Cooper, who was discussing Bitcoin in his 60 Minutes episode. So there, a Federal Reserve governor couldn't respond to his question about central bankers' manipulation of dollars. Instead, she decided to talk about FDIC insurance and legal protections. Well, long Bitcoin, short the bankers. So you see that it's basically the change of the sentiment. Another thing, Barry Zilbert from Digital Currency Group is giving an interview on Bloomberg. So CNBC, now Bloomberg. So Bloomberg is something that many people are watching and actually like taking into the consideration. So Barry was telling why this time is different, why we shall switch from gold to the digital gold. You remember the video ad that they are running recently, just a few days ago, I think it appeared on TV. So again, this is the general trend in the information, which is flipping right now in favor of crypto. Speaking about Barry Zilbert, you know, he founded Digital Currency Group, which established Grayscale, which deals with investments in cryptocurrencies. And just take a moment to look at the media covering Grayscale: Yahoo Finance, Forbes, ETF Advisor, CNBC, Fortune, The Block, Bloomberg, Business Insider. So you may imagine the reputation of Grayscale. And speaking about the media, recently here is what happened. Grayscale gets a regulatory nod from FINRA for Ethereum Trust to trade on OTC markets. And FINRA is a private corporation, but still it has a certain reputation, and it's actually a regulatory authority, right? So it deals with regulation on OTC market and has a lot of weight in the financial space, connections with New York Stock Exchange, and so on and so forth. So now we have the trust not only for Bitcoin but Ethereum as well. Does it mean that altcoin season is coming? Not necessarily today, but again, the narrative, the general sentiment of such things is definitely moving to another level. And here is another bombshell. AT&T now accepts BitPay. As you may know, AT&T is the largest company in telecommunication space, and now we can use Bitcoin in order to pay for our bills for mobile service. If this is not adoption, then I don't know what the adoption is. Like people say you can't use crypto, nobody accepts crypto. Well, now there is something which accepts crypto. And now here is the thing which I'm thinking about. As you remember, at the peak of the price, there was a time when the first Bitcoin futures were launched, CME and CBOE futures. And after that, we saw the long bear market, like more than 1 year bear market. And many people blame futures for this to happen. But guys, actually, as any financial derivative, futures is just a tool for providing additional liquidity to the market. And it is sort of unfortunate if it was actually a coincidence that futures were launched at the top of the price, of course, after the very long parabolic rise in the price. So those people who started to trade futures, of course, they went short because they were kind of traditional traders, and into the traditional markets after such a long growth there must be correction. So if the futures would be launched somewhere around here or even here, you may expect that it actually would bring some positiveness to the price action. So what do we have right here? Right here we have the news from Bakkt. Of course there was also ETF and Fidelity, but Bakkt is really right here. And what is different about Bakkt is, as you know, the Bakkt future contracts will be covered by the physical delivery of Bitcoin. So futures may include some condition on the price change, which would be the end of the contract. But technically, this price change may not happen until the end of the future contract period, so it will work like a forward contract in principle. And in that case, there are two parties. One party gives its Bitcoin to the custodial service of Bakkt, and another party will get that Bitcoin after a certain period of time, which is a contract period. And at the same time, this party will pay to the first one the assigned amount of money. So a part of the details, the major point here is that the amount of Bitcoin will be removed from the circulation and stored in the custody of Bakkt. So you may say that, okay, we have less supply, so the price probably will go higher. Well, technically it's not exactly true, because the party who would bring, they should get it from somewhere initially, and then eventually another party will have that Bitcoin and may be able to sell it. So technically it just will be locked on a certain period of time, and if those prices will be included into the price evaluation, then it doesn't really make much of a difference. However, after this contract period will be over, there will be new contract, like all the contracts which are used to be in the system, which would imply that every month there will be a certain number of Bitcoin in the custodial service locked. This is the first thing. So in that way, actually the supply will be less. The second thing is that we should realize who are those people who are coming to the Bakkt service in order to run those contracts. If let's say they already have Bitcoin, why do they need actually to have the service as Bakkt? If they already got their Bitcoin, then they probably be able to sell it somehow because they already bought it or they mined it, so there is no regular problems for them anyway. So it means that the only customers which Bakkt will have are those who are looking for having solutions with higher safety, like their custodial services, like their insurance, and so on and so forth. And those people will actually add the liquidity to the market, so they will provide additional fuel to the current trend of the price, which is now actually growth. And here is another point. If none of the participants have Bitcoin already, who will provide them those Bitcoins? Probably it will be done by Bakkt. In fact, they actually mentioned that they will contribute with $35 million into the clearinghouse risk waterfall. But the point is that if they are expecting, and they may expect, a lot of the demand from their customers to run those contracts, so if the volume will be really huge, $35 million will be nothing to cover it. So in that way, they would need to cover a potential volume for the future contracts with a lot of Bitcoins. So taking this into the account, together with the fact that at this point it was pretty much clear that the price of Bitcoin will go higher, Bakkt may consider to load their Bitcoin bags in order to not to buy Bitcoin over here, because it will be much more expensive, but buy Bitcoin here. This will not only cover their contracts with the physically existing Bitcoins on their wallets, but also eventually, because of the price rise, they will profit on that rise as well. So, and considering the potentially really huge volume that they would need to have, you may think that at the moment, Bakkt are one of the biggest investors in Bitcoin which were buying BTC in this area. Therefore, as one of the biggest investors, they're not interested for the price going lower, and therefore they actually may consider affecting the price, buying more and more on the corrections in order to let it go higher and higher. In fact, of course, it's not clear how it will affect the market in a really long term, but in any case, all in all, 2019 and actually the summer, which is really soon, will be pretty hot. So we'll see what will happen. That is it for today. I hope it was useful. Thank you for watching.